They had forgotten everything, like a person who is called forth to die and leave this world at once. Others immediately fainted due to separation from Krishna. Remembering his attractive smile and his talks with them, the gopis became overwhelmed with grief. They all remembered the characteristics of the personality of Godhead, how he moved within the area of Vrindavan, and how, with joking words, he attracted all their hearts. Thinking of Krishna and of their imminent separation from him, the gopis assembled together with heavily beating hearts. They were completely absorbed in thought of Krishna, and with tears falling from their eyes, they spoke as follows. O Providence, you are so cruel. It appears that you do not know how to show mercy to others. By your arrangement, friends contact one another, but before they can fulfill their desires, you separate them. This is exactly like a child's game that has no meaning. It is very abominable that you arranged to show us beautiful Krishna, whose bluish curling hair beautifies his broad forehead and sharp nose, and who is always smiling to minimize all grief in this world, and then arranged to separate him from us. O Providence, you are so cruel. But most astonishingly, you appear now as Akrūra, which means not cruel. In the beginning, we appreciated your workmanship in giving us these eyes to see the beautiful face of Krishna. But now, just like a foolish creature, you're taking away our eyes by not letting us see Krishna here anymore. Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is also very cruel. He must always have new friends. He does not like to keep friendship for a long time with anyone. We gopis of Vrindavan, having left our homes, friends, and relatives, have become Krishna's maidservants, but he is neglecting us and going away. He does not even look upon us, although we are completely surrendered unto him. Now, all the young girls in Mathura will have the opportunity. They are expecting Krishna's arrival, and they will enjoy his sweet smiling face and will drink its honey. Although we know that Krishna is very steady and determined, we are afraid that as soon as he sees the beautiful faces of the young girls in Mathura, he will forget himself. We fear he will become controlled by them and will forget us, for we are simple village girls. He will no longer be kind to us. We therefore do not expect Krishna to return to Vrindavan. He will not leave the company of the girls in Mathura. The gopis began to imagine the great functions in the city of Mathura. Krishna would pass through the streets, and the ladies and young girls of the city would see him from the balconies of their respective houses. Mathura city contained different communities, known then as the Dasharha, Bhoja, Andhaka, and Satvata. All these communities were different branches of the same family in which Krishna appeared, namely the Yadu dynasty. They were all expecting the arrival of Krishna. It had already been ascertained that Krishna, who is the resting place of the goddess of fortune and the reservoir of all pleasure and transcendental qualities, was going to visit Mathura city. The gopis then began to condemn the activities of Akrūra. They stated, they stated that he was taking Krishna, who was more dear than the dearest to them, and who was the pleasure of their eyes. He was being taken from their sight without their being informed or solaced by Akrūra. Akrūra should not have been so merciless, but should have taken compassion on them. The gopis went on to say, "The most astonishing feature is that Krishna, the son of Nanda, without consideration, has already seated himself on the chariot. From this it appears that Krishna is not very intelligent. Yet he may be very intelligent, but he's not very merciful." Not only Krishna, but all the coward men are so callous that they are already yoking the bulls and calves for the journey to Mathura. The elderly persons in Vrindavan are also merciless. They do not take our plight into consideration and stop Krishna's journey to Mathura. Even the demigods are very unkind to us. They are also not impeding his going to Mathura. The gopis prayed to the demigods to create some natural disturbance, such as a hurricane, storm, or heavy rainfall, so that Krishna could not go to Mathura. They then began to consider, despite our parents and guardians, we shall personally stop Krishna from going to Mathura. We have no alternative but to take this direct action. Everyone has gone against us to take away Krishna from our sight. Would just going to speak louder, huh? I wait. Haribo. 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 Without him, we cannot live for a moment. That was a long moment. The gopis thus decided to obstruct the passage through which the chariot of Krishna was supposed to pass. They began to talk among themselves. "We have passed a very long night, which seemed only a moment, engaged in the rasa dance with Krishna. We looked at his sweet smile and embraced him and talked with him. Now how shall we live?" Now how shall we live, even for a moment, if he goes away from us? At the end of the day, in the evening, along with his elder brother Balaram, Krishna would return home with his friends. His face would be smeared with the dust raised by the hooves of the cows, and he would smile and play on his flute and look upon us so kindly. How shall we be able to forget him? How shall we be able to forget Krishna, who is our life and soul? He has already taken away our hearts in so many ways throughout our days and nights, and if he goes away, there's no possibility of our continuing to live. Thinking like this, the gopis became more and more grief-stricken at Krishna's leaving Vrindavan. They could not check their minds, and they began to cry loudly, calling the different names of Krishna. Oh, dear Damodar, dear Madhava. The gopis cried all night before the departure of Krishna. As soon as the sun rose, Akrūra finished his morning bath, got on the chariot, and started for Mathura with Krishna and Balaram. Nanda Maharaj and the cowmen got up on the bullock carts after loading them with big earthen pots filled with yogurt, milk, ghee, and other milk products. And then they began to follow the chariot of Krishna and Balaram. In spite of Krishna's asking the gopis not to obstruct their way, they all surrounded the chariot and stood up to see Krishna with pitiable eyes. Krishna was very much affected upon seeing the plight of the gopis, but his duty was to start for Mathura, for this was foretold by Narada. Krishna therefore consoled the gopis. He told them that they should not be aggrieved. He was coming back very soon after finishing his business. But they could not be persuaded to disperse. The chariot, however, began to head west, and as it proceeded, the minds of the gopis followed it as far as possible. They watched the flag on the chariot as long as it was visible. Finally, they could see only the dust of the chariot in the distance. The gopis did not move from their places, but stood until the chariot could not be seen at all. They remained standing still, as if they were painted pictures. All the gopis decided that Krishna was not returning immediately, and with greatly disappointed hearts, they returned to their respective homes. Being greatly disturbed by the absence of Krishna, they simply thought all day and night about his pastimes, and thus derived some consolation. The Lord, accompanied by Akrūra and Balaram, traveled in the chariot with great speed toward the bank of the Yamuna. Simply by taking a bath in the Yamuna, anyone can diminish the reactions of his sinful activities. Krishna and Balaram took their baths in the river and washed their faces. After drinking the transparent, crystal clear water of the Yamuna, they took their seats again on the chariot. The chariot was standing underneath the shade of big trees, and the two brothers sat down there. Akrūra then took their permission to also take a bath in the Yamuna. According to Vedic ritual, after taking a bath in a river, one should stand at least half submerged and murmur the Gayatri mantra. While he was standing in the river, Akrūra suddenly saw Balaram and Krishna within the water. He was surprised to see them there because he was confident that they were sitting on the chariot. Confused, he immediately came out of the water and went to see where the boys were. And he was very much surprised to see that they were sitting on the chariot as before. When he saw them on the chariot, he began to wonder whether he had mistakenly seen them in the water. He therefore went back to the river. This time, he saw not only Balaram and Krishna there, but many of the demigods and all the siddhas, charanas, and gandharvas. They were all bowing down before the Lord. He also saw Lord Sheshanag with thousands of hoods. Lord Sheshanaga was covered with bluish garments, and his necks were all white. The white necks of Sheshanaga appeared exactly like snow-capped mountains. On the coiled lap of Sheshanaga, Krishna was sitting very soberly with 4 hands. His eyes were like the reddish petals of the lotus flower. In other words, after returning to the Yamuna, Akrūra saw Balaram turned into Sheshanaga and Krishna turned into Mahavishnu. He saw the 4-handed Supreme Personality of Godhead smiling very beautifully. The Lord was very pleasing to all and was looking towards everyone with a merciful glance. He appeared beautiful with his raised nose, broad forehead, attractive ears, and reddish lips. His arms, reaching to the knees, were very strongly built. His shoulders were high, his chest was very broad, and his neck was shaped like a conch shell. His navel was very deep, and his abdomen was marked with 3 lines. His hips were broad and big, resembling those of a woman, and his thighs resembled the trunks of elephants. The other parts of his legs, the joints and lower extremities, were all very beautiful. The nails of his feet were dazzling, and his toes were as beautiful as the petals of the lotus flower. His helmet was decorated with very valuable jewels. There was a nice belt around his waist, and he wore a sacred thread across his broad chest. Bangles were on his hands, and armlets on the upper portion of his arms. He wore bells on his ankles. He possessed dazzling beauty, and his palms were like lotus flowers. He was further beautified by the different emblems of the Vishnu Murti, the conch shell, club, disc, and lotus flower, which he held in his 4 hands. His chest was marked with the particular signs of Vishnu, and he wore fresh flower garlands. All in all, he was very beautiful to look at. Akrūra also saw his lordship surrounded by intimate associates like the 4 Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara, and other associates like Sunanda and Nanda, as well as demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva. The 9 great learned sages were there, and also devotees like Prahlad and Narada and the 8 Vasus. All were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord with clean hearts and pure words. After seeing the transcendental personality of Godhead, Akrūra immediately became overwhelmed with joy and great devotion, and all over his body there was transcendental shivering. Although for the moment he was bewildered, he retained his clear consciousness and bowed down his head before the Lord. With folded hands and faltering voice, he began to offer prayers to the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 39th chapter of Krishna. Akrūra's return journey and his vision of Vishnu Loka within the Yamuna River.
Anatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Koda Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sudivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyaeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Akrūra has arrived in Braj and been received by Krishna and Balaram and Nanda Maharaj. He's taken his meal, and then after his meal, Krishna and Balaram come to see him. And they ask about the welfare of their relatives in Mathura. And specifically, they're concerned with Kamsa, the greatest anomaly in the whole system of government. If the king is a demon, then the whole government is ruined and becomes dangerous. So, and he asks Akrūra, why did you come? What is your purpose? He knows everything, but still he inquires. So Akrūra tells of the various goings on in Mathura, especially since Narada's having informed Kamsa of Krishna's identity. Akrūra tells of Kamsa's plans for the Dhanurjagya and plans to kill Krishna and Balaram. And Krishna and Balaram just laugh. Then they send out the word that we will go to the Dhanurjagya, the ceremony, and all the coward men should come and should bring milk products and tribute to the king. And so on Krishna's word, they all do that. They start gathering everything, and they're getting ready to go the next morning. And the gopis learn this and are plunged into anxiety, the young gopis. They're stunned. They forget everything, like a person suddenly called forth to die and leave the world at once. Some of them faint. And they remember Krishna's transcendental activities, his smile, his talking with them, how he moved within Vrindavan and joked with them and attracted their hearts. And they became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna with tears falling from their eyes, they began to speak. Condemning providence. You just give us a little association with Krishna, and now you're taking Krishna away. They remember Krishna's bodily features, his broad forehead, his sharp nose, his smile. These are all impetuses for love of Krishna. They're called vibhav, things that stimulate love for Krishna. His bodily features, his paraphernalia, his dress, everything associated with him, his devotees also. So providence they condemn. And you've, most astonishingly, you're so cruel, but you're taking Krishna away through Akrūra, whose name means not cruel. So this is how you deal. So they condemn providence, they condemn Krishna. He's also cruel. Nanda Maharaj is also cruel. The demigods are also cruel. They're all cruel. And they start thinking of the women of Mathura. Now they're going to enjoy the presence of Krishna. They'll drink the honey of his beautiful face. And Krishna will be captivated by the beautiful girls of Mathura. They're thinking in this way. And they began to imagine the grand city of Mathura with its wonderful functions and Krishna passing through the streets and all the women gathered on the balconies to see him. And they began to again condemn Akrūra, who was so merciless and should have taken compassion on them. They're all merciless. Krishna's merciless. Akrūra is merciless. The cowherd men, the demigods, they pray to the demigods, do something. Create a hurricane, create a storm, create an earthquake, do something to stop Krishna from leaving. Then they decided that they would directly try to do something. Desperately, they would try to stop the chariot. Again, they're remembering Krishna. His face would be smeared with the dust from the cows. He'd smile, he'd play his flute. How can we forget Krishna? So their minds are absorbed in thought of Krishna, and they're calling out Krishna, Damodar, Madhava. All night they're crying. And the cowherd men are just next morning loading up the bullock carts, getting everything ready to go. But the gopis surround the chariot and they look at Krishna with pitiable eyes. But Krishna's duty was to go to Mathura. He consoled them. I'll be coming back soon. I'll just finish this work and come right back. And then the chariot departs. And the gopis stand like painted pictures and just stare at the chariot for as long as they can see, till they can no longer see the flag of the chariot, no longer see the dust raised by the chariot. And finally they just return to their homes, disappointed, thinking that now Krishna is left and not believing that Krishna will come back. Meanwhile, Akrūra and Krishna and Balaram are speeding toward Mathura on the chariot. And as one does on such journeys, they take a break along the way. They take bath in the Jamuna. Krishna and Balaram take their bath, and Akrūra goes to take his bath. And while in the water, Akrūra sees Krishna and Balaram in the water. But he's surprised to see them there because they were sitting on the chariot. That's where he left them. So he's confused. He goes back to the chariot. He sees Krishna and Balaram are still there. He goes back to the Jamuna. Again, he sees Krishna and Balaram. But this time, Balaram is turned into Sheshanag with thousands of hoods, with white throats like snow-capped mountains. And Krishna is sitting on the bed of the Sheshanaga as Mahavishnu. And they're surrounded by the Siddhas, the Gandharvas, the Charanas, the great sages. And again, his bodily features are described: his attractive ears, his reddish lips, his arms down to his knees, his shoulders, his chest, his neck shaped like a conch shell, his deep navel, his abdomen marked with the 3 lines. All the various parts of Krishna's body are described. Krishna is absolute. There's no dividing Krishna into parts. And yet, the various parts of Krishna's body are described because they're all separately attractive. His helmet, his bangles. This is paraphernalia of Krishna. It's also non-different from Krishna. Krishna and his flute, Krishna and his bangles, Krishna and everything connected with Krishna. So, Akrūra is overwhelmed with joy and devotion, seeing the personality of Godhead in this way. And he bows before the Lord, and then in the next chapter he'll offer prayers to the Lord. And in this way the chapter ends. Do we have some comments or questions? Yes, Akrūra Prabhu.
We know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna to show his universal form, not for himself. He was already convinced and enlightened by Krishna's previous discussions, but for the benefit of the people in general. But why did Krishna show his universal form to Akrūra?
Not universal form, but form as Sheshanag and Mahavishnu.
And Brahma and Shiva were there, and all these.
Yeah, they're all attending the Lord. The one thing is, it's a favor to Akrūra. He is blessed by this vision. And as Prabhupada comments elsewhere, it's just to create a subject matter for hearing. We're sitting and benefiting by this pastime, hearing the glories of the Lord, and hearing in the next chapter Akrūra's prayers. Because by seeing this form, Akrūra will be inspired to offer prayers to the Lord, which we could chant in Kartik every day, but instead we do something else. So Akrūra will be inspired to offer prayers which also are enlightening and purifying to hear. So these are some thoughts that come to mind.
I was thinking also the descriptions of Krishna's form, both in the gopis thinking about Krishna and in Akrūra, are like great, subjects that devotees meditate on, that they remember. What's the verse in the Brahma Samhita where it says that, that in the minds of recollecting souls, is rasa, ever blissful cognitive rasa.
Oh,
Or maybe I'm mixing two verses.
maybe that's a purport, or there's Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavatapi.
I'll see if I can think of the one about the mind of the record, that he performs his lila, which are always, or I don't know. I'll see if I can remember it.
See, we have Brahma Samhita text. And then you give to Akrūra, not the problem. Toward the end of the book. Okay. Okay, another question or comment. You had something? Oh, switch.
Maharaj has mentioned that it was the younger gopis.
The younger
there?
gopis. This is not the Nanda Yashoda's generation. These are the young gopis who danced with Krishna and were attracted to Krishna in conjugal love, not the older gopis who were attracted with parental feelings. Yes. Ah.
But I don't have the translation.
Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena
Santa Sadaiva Hridaya Vilokayanti Yang Shama Sundaram Achinchikura Swarup Govinda Mari Purushottamaham Bhajami. And does someone have the translation?
You have a translation? Is that good?
Eyes are smeared with the salve of love. See. That might not be, because that's their see him in their heart of hearts. But there's another one about his pastimes. Let's move on, and I'll see if I can find the right one.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just thinking the gopis' symptoms of grief, they're very relatable, but the one where their clothes loosen, I just don't understand.
Their clothes loosen. What does that mean? Their hair loosens, their clothes loosen. As far as I can understand, what it means is that they forget themselves. And so, if you're looking good, then you're making sure your tie is straight and your buttons are buttoned, or all the things that you would see too with your sari and all of that. Everything's in place, and they're just they lose that. So their clothes become loose. Their hair, you'd be very careful about your hair and how everything looks. That just goes, it's whatever. And in the context in which it appears, these are signs of conjugal desire for Krishna, conjugal love for Krishna. It happens to the wives of the demigods, it happens to the gopis. That's what appears to be going on there, as far as I can ascertain. That sound right? Yes.
Maharaj, we don't have love for Krishna. So how do we understand what love is when we don't have it?
You hear. We don't know what love is, but we're hearing something about what love is. We have routine service that we do because we've been asked to do it, or because this is what we do at this time of day, and this is our duty. And here you have the gopis who don't care about their duty, who forget everything, who are just mad with love for Krishna. So we don't have that experience, but by hearing about it, we can get some idea of that. When we, in any drama, mundane drama, the players are there, you get some vicarious experience. You don't know exactly, I have no experience of rescuing beautiful women from monsters and, all of that. But I pay $5 and I go to a film, and I'm now sort of immersed in the character. Or the girls are, the opposite. They're being saved by this great hero. They have no experience. Their boyfriends are some foolish little drips from high school or something. But now there's, whoever. And so by seeing the film, you get some taste. And then your mind goes on thinking about that. The mind goes on thinking about that. Or back in the days when people would read, they'd read novels and fiction and so on. People still read. And they get some entrance into the modes of material nature: passion, ignorance, rarely goodness. They may not have the depth of passion that these characters on the page have, but they get some taste, and therefore they become foolish. They start, imagining that they could taste that sort of thing. They remain little two-bit nothings, but in their minds they're thinking of all these great adventures. So that's the material platform, inspired by the modes of material nature and immersing us deeper in the modes of nature by association, by hearing. By hearing, one becomes lusty. By seeing some movie, one becomes lusty. By talking with others who are lusty, one becomes lusty. A young boy has no. People are like prematurely lusty because of the atmosphere. They're hearing, they're seeing, they're talking about it. It's all. This is what's in everyone's consciousness. So this is the material platform. But the original thing is there in pure form in the spiritual platform. By hearing about Krishna, by seeing dramas related to Krishna, by hearing about the qualities of Krishna, his form, his Rukmini never met Krishna. But by hearing from Narada and great sages about Krishna's qualities, she became entranced that this is, why do I want a Shishupal class of dog as my husband? I want only Krishna. He's the only person. So although she'd never seen him, she became so convinced that she was determined that Krishna has to be, just by hearing. So this hearing is so powerful. Hearing is so, therefore we're advised, go on hearing. Go on hearing these topics. All the topics, first canto, second canto, third canto, up through 10th canto, 11th, 12th. Go on hearing. Because that hearing will awaken our love for Krishna. That's, what is it? Suroruham, you know that verse? It's in third canto, Karnarandrena. The hearing of Bhagavad Gita acts like autumnal rains on dirty pools of water. And the water becomes clarified, and one's relationship for Krishna comes out. Found it. Pravishta Karnarandrena Swanam Pava Suroruham Dunoti Shamalam Krishna Shalilasya Yata Sharat. The sound incarnation of the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. Now the water of our consciousness is muddied by mundane attraction, by passion, by ignorance, by material goodness. And so we're forgetting Krishna and our relationship with Krishna. But by hearing this Srimad Bhagavatam, that water is purified. And then the relationship comes out when Krishna sits on the lotus of that relationship within the heart. So this is the effect of Srimad Bhagavatam. Is not just a book. It's not just even a book of tattva or philosophy, nor just a book of nice stories. But it acts powerfully to purify the heart. When the heart is purified, then one can see Krishna. Then one can remember Krishna. While the heart is full of impure things, we remember all the junk. But as the heart becomes purified by chanting Hare Krishna, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, by service, then this love comes out. Yes, Akrūra.
Actually, you were right. It's the one that starts, it's text 42. It starts, Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmatayamanakshuya Praninang Pratifalan Smaratamupetya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayat Jasram Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes, being reflected in the mind of recollecting souls as the transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa.
Transcendental entity?
Transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa. And there's a short purport, if you want to hear. Those who constantly recollect in accordance with spiritual instructions the name, figure, attributes, and pastimes of the form of Krishna appearing in the amorous rasa, whose loveliness vanquishes the god of mundane love, conqueror of all mundane hearts, are alone meditators of Krishna. Krishna, who is full of pastimes, always manifests himself with his realm only in the pure receptive cognition of such persons. The pastimes of that manifested divine realm triumphantly dominates in every way all the majesty and beauty of the mundane world.
There's a line there, the essence of it was in accordance with spiritual instructions. It's not willy-nilly or whimsically done, but by following the instructions of the spiritual master, by regularly hearing, or Srila Prabhupada said, by regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. These things come. Prabhupada didn't advise us just cram Rasalila. Patiently hear Srimad Bhagavatam. That was his advice. And hear all of Krishna's Leelas, not just the ones that the Bhagavatam reciters like to cash in on. Patiently hear, the result will come. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It seems like that Akrūra had to wait until he stepped out of Vrindavan before he had the vision of Krishna and Balaram as Mahavishnu and Shesha. Ananta Shesha. Now, when he arrived in Vrindavan, he saw Krishna as a coward boy, and then as soon as he stepped out, he had the vision. Now, was this beyond the borders of Vrindavan? And was he entering another realm of the spiritual world in that sense?
Was this beyond the borders of Vrindavan that Akrūra saw this vision? And was he entering another realm of the spiritual world? Yes, we hear that once he moves beyond, I think that this very point, if I remember, enters Mathura, basically, the Mathura region, where Krishna appears as Vasudeva. Krishna appears as Vasudeva. Vrindavanam parityaja padamekam nagacchati. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. But he appears in Mathura as his expansion, Vasudeva, who's also non-different from Krishna, but not quite in the same position. Outside of Vrindavan, Krishna is appearing, same Krishna apparently, but he's Vasudeva. And within Vrindavan, Krishna, the original form. Yes.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was wondering, we hear a lot of tips from devotees on how to best chant japa, but I was wondering in terms of Srila Prabhupada's books, if you could give some tips on how to best read Prabhupada's books and also to deepen our relation. Best read Prabhupada's books and also deepen our relationship with his books as well.
How best to, as there are instructions about japa, you'd like something about reading. Okay. I may not be the best person because the way I have done most of my reading is by working on books, which is, if you're a translator or you're an editor, then you really get the opportunity to be absorbed in the books because you have to read each word many times over. So that's very absorbing, but it doesn't help anyone else in terms of, a study plan. So what can I say? One is recommended to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of devotees. Reading with like-minded devotees is a wonderful way to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Someplace Chanakya Pandit says that if you're going to wage a war, you should do it with many people. And then if you're going to travel, you should have, 5 people or something? If you're going to study, you should have at least 2. He says, and eat by yourself. So when we're on our own, our attention may wander, but when we read in the association of other devotees, and then there's some discussion, and we're enlivened by different points, then it comes out still more. Therefore, this is the sort of time-old system of Bhagavatam study. Sanatana Goswami was reading Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of the Brahmins when he was escaping from his government duties. He wasn't just staying home and reading Srimad Bhagavatam. He was reading with the Brahmins because they'll bring out different points. So that's not to say that we shouldn't sit down alone with a book. No, I have to wait till 2 or 3 other people come. But this is one formula that when we read with others, and also that may give regularity. If you have, every day we're going to meet at such and such time, or whatever your schedule is, then that keeps you going, because, I have to meet at such and such time with my Bhagavatam group. I know there are many circles now of devotees who've been reading Bhagavad Gita together or Srimad Bhagavatam together for many years, maybe once a week or whatever their schedule is. And in the beginning, it's sort of like, okay, we'll do it. But over the years, it's matured into a real something spiritually enlivening and enriching and meaningful. So that's one way to read is in the association of devotees and appreciating, tasting, or diving in to the subject matter. And then there are all sorts of other, Burijan Prabhu talks about prayerful reading. And this comes, I think he derived it from a medieval formula, if I remember, for biblical reading. But anyway, the idea is to read not just, as your eye goes through the text, but in a prayerful sort of a way. What is the text saying to me? What mercy can I get from the text? What meaning is there? So not speeding through it, but reading with the hope and prayer of realizing something from the text. Some devotees like to keep notes of their realizations. That can be helpful. Some devotees write books, notes, outlines, graphs, charts, different ways of getting deeper into the books. And explaining what you've read. Even if you read and you share with others what you've read, it becomes cemented, it becomes stronger. It can be anything. You read something, and then prasadam that day, you meet some friends and you say, did you know that when Akrūra left Vrindavan, he saw Krishna and Balaram turned into Mahavishnu and Sheshanag, and tell something with the details. And they make, like, where's she coming from? Like, but by repeating what you've heard, first of all, you benefit those with whom you speak, and it becomes more fixed in your mind. Or even outsiders, because we're not always reading, Krishna's hair is bluish and curling, and the bees are circling around. We're not always reading that, but we're reading how, as we'll read how he's the master of the cosmic manifestation, how time is working under his green, all of these things. So many philosophical points. You can repeat those to people that you meet when you're distributing books or when you're anywhere, anyone. And Jai Dakotariko Krishna Upadesh. Whatever instructions you've read, if you share with others, then it increases in value and enters more deeply into your mind and heart. We have to speak about something, and we have to hear about something. So why go along with what they want to speak about and what they want to hear about? They're pushing their thing on us. Well, push back. Or follow the same pattern. They talk about what they like to talk about. We talk about what we like to talk about. Mhm. So, even in the association of devotees, sometimes, devotees shoot the breeze, as we say. They just talk about this and that, less important, devotionally related topics. Hour number 276 of What's Wrong with ISKCON. All of this kind of stuff. So we don't have to spend our life that way. We can spend our life with these wonderful topics. That's Bhavoshadat Shrotamanobirama. This is the medicine for material existence. And it's very pleasing to the heart, pleasing to the ear. Those other topics, it's like discouraging and perplexing and agitating. And it's all like 2 minutes in eternal history. It has not going to last all that long. So not to say that we have no interest in particularly things of with a devotional connection, plans for how to distribute books. And no, that's not eternal. That's only going to last for the month of December, so I don't want to hear about that. But there's so many topics of not much importance. We can and then we save our time. That's the first thing, because people often say, I have no time to read. But I have time to gossip, I have time to check my Facebook feed, I have time for this, I have time for that. There's one Roman writer, Seneca, said, look after the minutes and the hours will take care of themselves. So steal time. Avyarta kala tvam. This is a symptom of an advanced devotee. He doesn't like to waste time. So whenever you have time, you have a book with you and just read. And then that good reading drives away useless topics. Read, chant, serve. These are some thoughts. And different devotees have different systems. They read X number of pages a day, or they read at a certain time, or they read in a certain, so you can talk to other devotees, see what works for them. But there's at least some thoughts to get things started. Something else? Yes, Sham Prabhu.
I have a few questions. Start with the light ones, kind of light ones. I'll start with the light ones, I said. I was wondering, why does Akrūra and Krishna and Balaram not bathe at the same time? I don't know. Kind of like, it reminds me
I
of...
don't know if there's a comment on that by the acharyas. I don't know if there's a comment on that by the acharyas. Whether it's, I won't speculate.
And another kind of...
One reason is so that the pastime will work.
Now I was reflecting on the white of Anantashesh and his, and I was looking at these sofas, and I was like, oh, the sofas seem to be like a, like a wannabe, the ultimate sofa of Anantashesh, of
There's
coils.
nothing like it. They're the most damn uncomfortable sofas you can imagine. They're, big, what's the word? Ostentatious, sort of nouveau riche in Indian sofas, and they're totally uncomfortable, and they're nothing like an Antashesh. An Antashesh is he's the perfect servant of Lord Vishnu. I'm sure Lord Vishnu is absolutely comfortable. But this couch is not an Antashesh, and I'm not Mahavishnu.
Hmm. Thank you. No, I wasn't insinuating that. I was just thinking how we're trying to copy that, I suppose.
Yeah, this is what we get. Mahavishnu gets Sheshanag, and we get this.
And
we get what we deserve too.
another question is about prayers, and so next we're going to hear about Akrūra's prayers. And actually, you mentioned quickly about how we could sing that. I didn't get that.
Those who've been attending these classes understand the reference.
Yeah.
There's a custom that's come up in recent years that during Kartik in Vrindavan especially, and now it's spread to other temples, we're supposed to sing Gopi Gita. But that's not something that was introduced by Srila Prabhupada, and I'm not quite sure why Gopi Gita. There's so many prayers. Why have we selected these quite intimate prayers, by the way, as being something we're supposed to chant in Kartik? Could be prayers of Akrūra, but no, Gopi Gita. So that was the reference. Not that we can't hear Gopi Gita or that they're not sweet or that we shouldn't hear them, but just sort of wondering how this has become now the next established custom in ISKCON. You introduce something, you introduce something else, you introduce something else. Prabhupada introduced Damodarashtakam and mainly Hare Krishna. And maybe it's a wonderful idea, I don't know, Gopi Gita, but I'm not quite persuaded. That's the reference.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
didn't
of course
follow.
you weren't here.
I could have been. I watched some, but I didn't. In what I watched online, I didn't catch that. I was wondering about the prayers as well, like, because I understood that.
You have to hold it close and
Yes.
speak loud enough.
All right. My question is about. We understand. I read that I'm supposed to offer prayers prior to speaking to Krishna, like many instances, devotees first offer prayers of praise, and I struggle with. I guess I act way, I act way more familiar than I should with Krishna, and I just speak without prayers or things like that, not really speaking to him, but in my mind, I sometimes say things without
I don't have
prayers.
anything negative to say about that. We do see in Bhagavatam that generally something is said acknowledging Krishna's glories and then putting in the petition.
Right.
Please, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead with such and such attributes. Please help me out.
Right.
Or so we do see that pattern, but Prabhupada never pushed that. But if you're thinking that is appropriate, you can do that, certainly.
Yeah, it struck me recently when I was reading about Ashwatthama story and Arjuna.
Yeah, I was just thinking exactly of that verse. Brahmastra's chasing after him, and he still has time for a quick prayer. So, yeah, we can pick up that. It's instructive for us. So if you like, you can pick that up. Yeah.
And then final question.
Good, because we're running out of time.
Sometimes hearing about personalities from Gaur Ganadhish.
Just for a second to interrupt you, I tend to be, there's a bias in me. I'm not a very prayerful person. So I think if I were more prayerful, I would endorse more fully the idea that, okay, just a confession of my own personal shortcoming. Go ahead.
Thank you. In Gaur Ganadhish, because sometimes we hear about personalities in their other leelas, and I feel like that's happening a lot, but sometimes it feels like it detracts from the current pastime to understand that they were actually pretty exalted in another, or partially an example of that. Yeah, I was just hearing you. This question came up when you were speaking about Rukmini's awe and her not knowing Krishna, but then in me something goes like, oh, she's probably a far out personality who has an eternal relationship, and maybe something maybe mentioned in Gaur Ganadhish Deepika or something from her other,
Well,
like that.
there's two things. As far as the eternal relationship, that's there, and yet there's a history of its development. Just like the Lakshmi, the eternal consort of the Lord, and yet she becomes his eternal consort after appearing from the churning of the ocean. So it's eternal, but there's some history of how that happens. Krishna gets the gift of his conch shell or his chakra or what have you, even though there is his eternal paraphernalia. So that's one side of it. The other side is that there are corresponding identities in Gaura Lila for the various associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. So that's meant to especially enhance our understanding and appreciation of those Gaura Lila personalities. Because we already know that there's Krishna, there's Yashoda, there's Nanda Maharaj, there's Balaram, there's Brajbasis, Braja associates of Krishna are already known. But we don't know, when we know the glories to some extent of these persons, but we don't know the glories of Srivas Thakur and Haridas Thakur and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and so on. And so these, so Gaur Ganadhish Deepika is meant to enhance our appreciation of them. And you can say the unknown by reference to the known. But it's not that while reading the prayers of Akrūra or the pastimes here, I have to think, oh yes, and in Gaura Lila, that by some artificial sort of, no, you have to, when you read these Braja pastimes, you have to think about the corresponding personalities in Gaura Lila. Otherwise, no, it's not like that. But it's meant to enhance our appreciation of Mahaprabhu and his pastimes and associates. And abode, Navadvip is Braja Mandalabhumi Jebajande. What is that? Gaura Mandalabhumi Jebajane Chintamani Taroi Braja Bhumibas. Is that okay? Okay, so we can stop here. Thank you very much. Good questions. Again, I have to leave a little timely. That's how it's going with me now. I have meetings after this one. So Kirtan, who's leading Kirtan today? You're going to go see Krishna Balaram. Yeah, this is only possible in Vrindavan. There's some prasadam. We have some Mahaprasadam today, I hope. Yes, it's our principle that you shouldn't have to leave without Mahaprasadam. And we're so grateful to have your company. Quickly.
Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadisutarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Padaman Suparivraj Vikacharya Stotra Saraswati Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Ramana Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande.